right. Finally, let's learn a little bit and talk a little bit if anybody's out there. Doubt anybody is. I'm revamping this show. I've done it plenty of times before, and I'm trying to keep steady with it now because I definitely need an outlet for some Alex Jones style ranting and just really a space to learn more and try to stay open minded. So I'm just going to talk about current events with people, and hopefully, at the end of my life, I will have learned something by talking to regular, everyday people. Because it is at this point that we have learned we cannot trust our government. We cannot trust other governments. We especially cannot trust rich people. I definitely can't say that every rich person and every government official is a bad person, but that tends to leave my mouth on occasion. So, having said that, let's try to jump into something here. I've got a bunch of stuff pulled up about the conflicts going on, and I'm not quite sure I know everything I should know. So, some of the things that I'll go over until I get a call or until I just feel like I don't want to talk anymore. We're going to look at what the Iran and Israel conflict is and how long it's been going on, major phases of the conflict. And I do have notes over here, so you'll definitely see me looking at those. um, the Obama era actions that materially changed the conflict environment, Trump era actions that materially changed it. What changed in 2024 to right now? That would be your direct war phases, and then how the general populations of Israel and Iran feel based on measurable polling and stuff like that. So, I want to make sure I can hear myself here. Everything sounds good. All right, get a little boost on that. Let's bring this up. All right, that should be more clear now. So I do have my phone next to me somewhere if people want to call in while I'm going over this. Don't expect to even have any viewers right now, but let's go. So, number one, how long has the Iran and Israel conflict been going on? So, before 1979, Iran and Israel were not enemies. For decades after Israel's founding, 1948, Iran and Israel had periods of cordial and cooperative relations. I mean, you could go back to religious days and talk about 5,000 plus years of conflict. Um, so, as far as government goes, and stuff like that, and social conflict, it's not, they're not being grouped together. I think you have to include both periods of time. I understand countries had different names and things were going on differently. I get all that. But, anyways, just a precursor or a reminder to myself mainly, because I definitely don't want to speak in absolutes when you're dealing with things that have changed names over the years and people who have changed positions and all of that. It's too much information to try and speak in absolutes. So, anyways, cooperative relations between them before 1979. Reporting and historical summaries note trade ties. Iranian oil flows to Israel and security cooperation prior to the 1979 revolution. Um, Looks like things were basically okay between them at that point. Um, However, there was a break in 79 that created the modern conflict. The modern hostile relationship is generally dated to 79 when Iran's Islamic Revolution replaced the monarchy and Iran severed official ties with Israel. Since then, Iran and Israel have had no diplomatic relations, and modern relations are described as hostile. So we are looking at 79, 89, 99, 2009, 2019. We're looking at 40 plus years of serious, serious conflict. And when you're dealing with countries like those that definitely aren't as advanced in some areas as, say, us, they are advanced in other areas, yes, and some of that I believe is our fault. You could blame specific presidents, but people voted these presidents in and supported them throughout. So it's not a good idea to say it's just the president's fault. I mean, you can be a man about it and say that you were wrong, and you can go back and be like, "Hey, I was wrong here. I can see a difference now." Or you can just ignore that and keep supporting these people. And it's on both sides too. That's the problem, but we'll get to that later. Let's see, where was I? Where was I? Where was I? Where was I? 1980s to present. So this is quoted as the proxy conflict. It becomes the dominant pattern at this point from the 80s to now. A common starting point for the structured Iran Israel proxy conflict is the mid 1980s, with Iran backing armed groups, especially, and I'm going to butcher some words here, but especially Hezbollah, that fought Israel alongside Israeli efforts to counter Iranian influence and capabilities. The bottom line is hostile severed relations era around 1979 to present, proxy conflict era 80s to present, and then direct state on state strike era from basically 2024 onward. So we are looking at a couple of years here, just straight violence all the way through. All right, now let's look at what the conflict actually consists of and how Iran and Israel fight. This conflict has typically been multi-layered, and it's not one single war. Proxy warfare and regional armed networks. Iran, and as I'm reading these notes, if you hear a small statement like that, I title all my notes and all my sections so I can keep everything in order. So, proxy warfare and regional armed networks. Iran has long been documented as supporting armed actors aligned with its regional strategy. Hezbollah is the most prominent in the Iran Israel context, while Israel treats those groups as a part of an Iranian threat network. So, two, covert and cyber conflict, nuclear related and beyond. A major documented cyber element is the operation commonly associated with Stuxnet, which targeted Iranian nuclear centrifuges. Let's see. Once again, butchering the name, Natanz, Natanz, is repeatedly referenced in public accounts. 3, or C, strikes and counterstrikes outside each other's territory, especially Syria. So, a major contact zone for years has been Syria, where Iranian linked forces and infrastructure have existed, and where Israel has carried out strikes in the context of blocking weapons transfers and degrading Iranian entrenchment. This is part of the broader proxy shadow war pattern described in major trackers and timelines. And finally, we have direct strikes from Iranian territory to Israeli territory. It's a major shift. In April 2024, Iran carried out a large-scale direct aerial attack on Israel with drones and missiles, described by Reuters as Iran's first direct attack on Israeli territory. So once again, just a lot of violence, and it's pretty childish in my opinion. Like all of these things are very childish. When you have a 40-plus-year conflict, you're rarely dealing with the same people in office or in power as you were 40 years ago. So one of the conversations I was having yesterday at work with a retired state trooper, it's I'm not my ancestors. I didn't do this to you, so you didn't do that to me. And whatever your background is, that applies to all cultures. It applies to racism and slavery. It applies to Israel and Iran. It applies to religious versus non-religious people. Um, you know, the modern day Christians don't really go around mass killing people. You know, some of the Catholics are a little bit sketchy, but not on the murder front. Um, and as far as like slavery, I haven't done that to anybody. And as far as I know, nobody's done that to me. So I like to think of things that way. I never understood why other countries can't get past that. I don't know if it's that their minds are not as advanced as some other countries because of the leadership they've carried, or if there's something deeper going on. I know there's a lot of money involved with these places, and it would seem, as history has shown us, the more money there is, the worse things are usually going to be. Uh, it's an awkward thing because money's great. I think capitalism is great. I've always been a fan of business, and I mean, even quality businesses that charge a little bit too much for services, I've always kind of understood it. You want to live the American dream, or just the dream in general. I guess everybody in every country wants to be rich. It's no secret that money rules the world. Um, so it's just wrapping all of those thoughts into one final thought there. It just doesn't make sense why 40 plus year conflict can't be solved. We're involved in old conflicts, and we've got our own. Um, Lord knows China and America have not always seen eye to eye, and it's for many reasons, tech reasons, U.S. note reasons, as far as how much stock you want to call it, just for people who don't understand the notes and all of that, and the bonds. So there's all of these things, including America, just doesn't make sense to me. Um, why haven't we figured out a way to talk around it, especially when the governments make the money? That's the biggest thing right there, and I'll talk for a second on that. Like, you make all the money. You literally make all the money. If you want to end the problems, all right, let's figure out where the money needs to go. Let's support whatever parts of our system can help us solve these problems. Um, it doesn't make sense to control people, in my opinion. Like, why can't everybody have a super nice house? It just doesn't make sense. I understand that people that are lazy and non-working, non-contributing to the society, they don't deserve that. So that's a fair assessment. But once again, they make all the money. So I'm ranting. See, this is why I need this show. This is also why I need a co-host, so somebody can bring me back to it. That's why I have notes too. So, if we're looking at a key escalation timeline here for the conflict, Damascus consular embassy complex strike, April 1st, 2024. And I might go back to some of these. These really aren't super, super important. It's just important to know them, just like a history class, I guess. April 13th and 14th, you've got Iran's first large direct aerial attack on Israel, we mentioned earlier. You have June 2025, a 12-day war framing. It appears in multiple reputable sources. So that's another thing. Some people say battle, some people say war. I think if you've got a conflict for 40 plus years, whether it's a Cold War or an all-out violent war, it's a war, in my opinion. So I'm going to say war. Some people are saying we are not getting ourselves involved in a real war right now. Some people are saying that that's just an opinionated piece of garbage information that nobody even needs. And then from February to March to now, this year, a large-scale U.S.-Israel war against Iran in regional retaliation. So that's kind of the history of their conflict and How we got involved with them, I'm still not 100% sure, but you've got two major presidents on different sides of the coin that are forcing themselves to be involved in this. And I think it's stupid on both sides. I do not agree with joining a 5,000-year-old conflict. And I know earlier I said 1979, but fuck it, I'm going to put it in there. You know, we're dealing with political and government conflict, as well as probably a deep-seated some type of racist or anti-Semitic whatever from the Bible days, pretty much. And a lot of people disagree with that. Like I said, I know countries change names and there's different people and they move to different places, but just call it what it is. Um, it's a 5,000 year plus conflict. So, now I guess we can read a little bit about Obama and what he did that changed the Iran Israel conflict environment. All right, so the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear agreement, what it is, what it required, and why it mattered to Israel Iran dynamics is what I'm going to go over here. So let's talk about what it is first. The JCPOA is the 2015 nuclear agreement aimed at restricting and monitoring Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. It's widely summarized by arms control organizations and in the official U.S. archival materials. The UN the UN Security Council endorsed the JCPOA framework via Resolution 2231, adopted on July 20th in 2015, which set a structure for lifting and terminating certain prior UN measures and created specific restrictions. Now, if anybody is listening and you want to join in the conversation and you want me to go deeper onto those things, I do have links to just sit here and dive deeper with anybody who wants to go deeper. Because some of these things I made notes on while reading other things and just kind of put a structure together. Some of these things I did not super deep dive into myself, so I would like to get into that, but being as it's so late already, I just kind of want to go through this and talk to anybody who wants to talk and just kind of bullshit with people a little bit. So what this deal required, and I'm going to give you concrete examples of constraints. It limits commonly cited in arms control limits commonly cited in arms control fact sheets include uranium enrichment cap at 3.67% for 15 years, enrichment at specific sites, Natanz, or however you say it, for a period, major reductions in installed and operating centrifuges, and storage of excess centrifuges under monitoring, IAEA monitoring and verification measures. These constraints are laid out in detail in arms control summaries. And I have links for that as well. Let's look at how this connected to the Israel and Iran conflict. This is mechanism, not opinion. Israel's strategic focus has long included preventing Iran from reaching a nuclear weapons capability. And I'll stop right there. Why is that always our focus? I don't understand the whole point in big stick diplomacy and being like, oh, we have nuclear power. Okay. Before long, we're all going to have it. And it's going to be super dangerous either way. It does not prove in any way that you are better than someone else. Trump, Obama, Biden, every president I know of has always done this big stick bullshit where they're like, hey, look at me. I've got a nuke. We control your blah, blah, blah. Whoever they're talking to. And just big stick bullshit. I never cared for that. I always thought it was stupid. It's only necessary when people are making active threats. So there are certain situations where I can say, okay, maybe a good threat if they know what we can actually do, sure. But, you know, that's also stuff that shouldn't be dealt with with public speeches and stuff like that. Uh, Another conversation. Let's see here. So yeah, let me go back a little bit. How this is all connected to the Israel and Iran conflict. As I said, mechanism, not opinion. Israel's strategic focus has long included preventing Iran from reaching a nuclear weapons capability. The JCPOA directly governed enrichment levels, stockpiles, and inspection frameworks, meaning it became central to Israel's threat calculus and to Iran's leverage and constraints. This is a statement about the deal's subject matter and why it's relevant, not a value judgment. Obama's military assistance framework to Israel. This is just hard numbers and structure here. Once again, no opinionated pieces until I look over this way and start bullshitting. The Obama administration, the Obama administration concluded a 10-year memorandum, I guess that's how you say that, of understanding, an MOU, in September 2016, described in the White House fact sheet as a $38 billion over the period. So, see, that's the largest single pledge of military assistance in U.S. history per that release. That's a lot of money. Reuters later summarized the same MOU structure as including 33 billion. So we said 38 billion earlier. 38 billion is the first number. MOU structure as including 33 billion in FMF and 5 billion for missile defense. That's a lot of money when we have had an economy that's been on the down slope since 2000, since 9/11. I'll go back that far, since 9/11. It's just like the market, watching it go down. It might jump a little bit, go down, jump, go down, and every time it jumps, we're like, oh man, our president's doing great. So, let's look at the late Obama UN diplomacy flashpoint. Not Iran, but it affects U.S. and Israel relations. In December 2016, UN Security Council Resolution 2334 passed 14-0, with the U.S. abstaining, condemning Israeli settlement activity and calling it a violation of international law and lacking legal validity, as stated in the resolution text and summaries. Once again, have the links for all that. If nobody believes me, I only make notes on straight facts. I keep opinions off the notebook. So that's basically, let's see, one more note about the Obama administration and Obama. We've got covert and cyber disruption of Iran's nuclear program during this era, very publicly described as a public documentation that widely associates Stuxnet with disruption to Iran's centrifuge operations. This is commonly referenced as a major cyber episode in the nuclear confrontation context. So now we can move on from Obama to Trump. So let's look at what Trump did to change the Iran-Israel conflict environment. Once again, facts, mechanisms, and outcomes. A. The U.S. exit from the JCPOA and sanctions re-imposition. Maximum pressure architecture. Here's what happened. Trump announced the U.S. would cease participation in the JCPOA on May 8, 2018. This date is repeatedly referenced in U.S. sanctions and executive documentation. The Executive Order 13846 from August 6, 2018, explicitly references the May 8 decision and provides the basis to reimpose sanctions. The U.S. Treasury OFAC guidance states that on November 5th, 2018, the U.S. fully reimposed sanctions that had been lifted and waived under the JCPOA after the wind-down period. A lot of weird back and forth stuff going on here. What this changed in measurable nuclear monitoring terms, Colin. The IAEA's reporting describes that from May 8, 2019 onward, Iran stopped implementing nuclear-related commitments under the JCPOA on a step-by-step basis, and then by February 23rd, 2021, stopped implementing them altogether, including the additional protocol, reducing what the IAEA could verify and monitor under the JCPOA framework. The IRGC designation as a foreign terrorist organization, FTO. The U.S. Department announced intent to designate the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a foreign terrorist organization in 2019, April 8th. I'm not going to say this dude's name because I will butcher it. Actually, you know what? He's dead, so it doesn't matter. We'll try it. The killing of Qasem Soleimani, January 2020. That's not a terrible guess. The U.S. Department of Defense issued a statement describing the strike that killed this man and framed it as preventing planned attacks on the U.S. Or on the U.S. personnel and diplomats. The strike occurred at the beginning of January 2020, commonly cited as the January 3rd local time, or as January 3rd local time. The DoD released its date on release is dated on January 2, 2020. Sorry, a lot of dates are getting me a little tongue-tied here. I've never had this many dates back-to-back in my notes. So let's go over that again. The strike occurred at the beginning of January 2020, commonly cited as January 3rd local time, but the DoD is dated January 2, 2020 in the referenced posting. That's normal. That happens all the time. The Abraham Accords 2020, regional diplomatic realignment around Israel. The U.S. Department hosts the text of the Abraham Accords Declaration, and U.S. government archives describe normalization agreements beginning with the UAE and the Bahrain and signed in Washington in September 2020. Maybe Bahrain, doesn't matter. These accords are relevant to Israel and Iran, the Israel and Iran conflict dynamics, because they changed Israel's diplomatic and security relationship with multiple Arab states. Again, this is describing what changed structurally, not really judging it at this point in time. So 2025 to present with Trump, what's documented and what's happening now? Looks like formal maximum pressure restoration from last month. The White House states on February 4th, Trump signed a national security presidential memorandum restoring maximum pressure with stated goals including denying Iran paths to nuclear weapon and countering Iranian influence abroad. Now, let's see. June 2025, Israel-Iran strikes a 12-day war. Bookings and multiple later survey reports reference a June 2025 war period describing as roughly 12 days. I don't know why I put that note right there with all that other 2026 stuff that doesn't make any sense. Let's see. Reuters and AP reporting from late February and early March 2026 describe a large-scale U.S. And Israeli attacks on Iran, Iranian retaliation against Israel, and U.S.-linked regional attacks, or regional targets, and then public statements by leaders about the campaign lasting weeks or longer. And this is all stuff that we've heard already. So, now let's just look at the basic effects of Trump and Obama being so into this. What did Obama do to help or hurt, and what is Trump doing to help or hurt, based on opinions, but without opinions here. So the Obama era objective effects, as documented, are that he created a multilateral nuclear constraint and verification regime, the JCPOA, with specific caps and monitoring endorsed via UNSC 2231. He provided a defined long-term military aid framework to Israel. 2016 MOU, 38 billion over 10 years, blah blah blah, including the missile defense components. He also shifted the U.S.-Israel diplomatic context late in the term via abstention on UNSC 2334. And that's really it. Looks like a lot of helping there, a lot of helping fuel the problem. That's just an opinion. It's really not an opinion. It's actually kind of a fact, to be honest with you. So now let's look at Trump's second term objective effects as documented so far. He has fully restored the maximum pressure, obviously. Reporting indicates the conflict escalated into a large-scale U.S.-Israel war with Iran in early 2026 with region-wide retaliation. And then the IAEA's ability to verify Iran's enrichment status and stockpile is described as impaired in current reporting after strikes and access restrictions. So, I know to a lot of people it would look like Trump is just trying to clean up a mess. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, he's trying to clean up a mess. However, why? Why is it important to us? So many people say so many different things. There's a lot of money over there. There's oil in the area. There's all kinds of resources, things we can get from them. But when you look at how corrupt the government already is, or at least the CIA and the FBI, I can't say every single person is bad, but I mean, it's very obvious that the majority are either a part of some grand conspiracy or just pure evil, and they all have their own selfish wants. I think it's more likely that than a grand conspiracy. I think there are some grand conspiracies that are massive, that are real, that are legitimate. But when it comes to all of this, and the wars, and the news, the media, and trying to keep us down as a nation, and fighting against each other and all of that, I don't think it's a grand conspiracy per se. I think it's just as simple as all the rich people have turned evil. Most of the congressional people have turned evil. I don't know what kind of evil it is. I don't know if it's going to last forever. Don't know if it'll change. Doubt it will. History shows it's time for America to fall. And that might be cynical and BS or whatever, but that's just how I see it. So, having said that, I am going to throw this off for a second. And take a short 2-second break.